Okay. Could you please state your name?
Andrew Sittu, Sitto.
And are you a resident of Michigan?
Michigan, yes.
Okay. How long have you been a resident?
Most of my life. I lived in Florida for about 6 years in Orlando, and I moved back in 2010. I've lived here ever since.
Okay. So are you over 18 years of age?
Yes.
Okay. What was your involvement, or what days were you involved with the election this year?
I was a volunteer for roughly the past month, on many days.
Okay. Let's just take the week of the election.
Okay.
So the day before election, November 2nd?
Yes.
Where were you?
The day before the election, I was watching a Detroit satellite center, and I was guarding the drop box.
A Detroit Satellite Center. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so in Detroit, they have 30 different locations where they have drop boxes, which is the box where people tend to drop off ballots. They can also do early voting inside the center. And I would go there and watch to make sure that harvesters would not come any near. And I would do that for roughly 10 to 12 hours a day for a couple days before the election day.
What is a harvester?
A harvester is when you would have a car come to the ballot drop box, which was not guarded, it is outside 24 hours, and they would park in front of the box and drop off more than a couple of ballots inside the drop box, in which the next day or next morning or during business hours, an employee would come outside, unlock the box, take all the ballots, take them inside, and then you would see a USPS truck come to the satellite office and pick up all of the ballots that were dropped off inside the drop-off box.
Okay, so when you talk about the harvesters, though, why would the harvesters coming to the drop box be an issue?
Because you can have a very easy chance of potentially someone dropping off abundance of ballots, which probably will not be solicited ballots, requested ballots. These would be the unsolicited ballots that by law you can only drop off 1 or 2 for family members, but it's potential that someone will drop off a dozen or more ballots that are probably not certified into the box, for which to take to the operation at TCF.
So the TCF being the Cobo Hall where they're counting all
the counting board
results.
Yes.
Okay. So does that actually work, though? I mean, how does one just create an unregistered ballot and then manage to get it through the elections process and into a tabulator? I mean, doesn't the tabulator check for some sort of integrity?
So you run the ballots through the tabulator, and in many cases, the tabulator will stop and catch a ballot. And on many occasions, which I personally witnessed, the reason will be unknown to why the tabulator had stopped the ballot from processing. In the case of which that happens, the worker takes the ballot, and we have to duplicate that ballot and run it through the tabulator again. And on top of that, I've also witnessed where that has happened, and the second time we run it through the tabulator, it also becomes flagged, and we have to duplicate it a third time.
So why, if you duplicated it onto a legitimate official ballot, why would that be stopped by the tabulator machine? Because for all it has, because it's been duplicated by a human hand,
yes,
it has no way of knowing that from which it was duplicated may have been fraudulent, correct?
Correct.
So why would it stop a duplicated ballot again?
The result we got was unknown reasons.
Are you suggesting that the empty ballots that the duplicator poll workers were using, that the poll workers were using to duplicate ballots, may themselves have been illegitimate?
Well, what's happening is that we have 3 copies or 2 extra copies of the ballot that was supposed to be processed, if that makes sense. So
when the ballot, and to be clear for the audience, there's nothing illegitimate about duplication in and of itself. If you have a real ballot, but it's defective in some way, it has to be transcribed or duplicated by hand onto a different one within the information is supposed to be identical, the same votes as it was in the original one. Right?
Correct. For example, if a ballot came in with a coffee stain, that's a proper instance in which we make a duplicate.
Right.
In no case did we see any ballot with coffee stains or any real legitimate reasons for defective ballots to be duplicated other than machine told reasons to duplicate the ballots.
Interesting.
Every ballot looked normal.
So were you able to get close enough and look at these ballots that were being duplicated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when a ballot is duplicated, though, aren't they supposed to destroy the original one or put it in some sort of a bin that says this is not to be counted?
Unless tampered with, they do have all of the ballots stored in, they look like cabinets that roll. So like, they have a holder, you can walk around, and they're probably about 2 shelves high, filled in with the original ballots. They shouldn't have the original copies.
The discarded ballots that had been duplicated.
Yes, they had, every table had a black bin and a white bin, a black box. The black box was for the original ballot that was duplicated to be placed in that black box. After they duplicate the ballot process and they put the new ballot into the white bin, it was a USPS bin, and once they get about 200 of those ballots, they take them to the tabulators.
Okay.
So we have the originals, and we have the duplicate plus everything else we've processed. Take it to the tabulators, and the tabulators could also reject again, which is why we would have to make a third duplicate.
Okay. So when you discard an original ballot that had been duplicated, is it going into a sealed box of any kind or one that cannot be opened?
It was a separate manila folder inside a black box sitting at every single table. And but the procedure is that they would take the original ballot, put it into the folder, place it into the box, close the box. Now, that didn't happen in every case, but most cases that's what happened. And I would stay until that was officially done. And on some occasions, they would leave the box open, and I would stand there and not speak to them. And they would say, "Why are you standing there?" I said, "You need to close the box just to make sure."
Okay. So we've jumped around a little bit in terms of timeline. I guess you're talking now about election day.
This is election night at the county board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's back up again to the previous night. Sorry to go out of order here, but you were guarding a drop box to be sure that a harvester is not bringing just a bunch of ballots of questionable legitimacy and just chucking them in the bin, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And this is the process. They just, in Detroit, we have these ballot depositories everywhere, and they just have a volunteer security to watch them. Is that correct?
Many of the locations don't even have a volunteer to watch, but I was one that was there, yeah.
And from what you've described, it's not clear to you that if a fraudulent ballot or a bunch of fraudulent ballots were placed in there, that they necessarily would have been spoiled when they were on tabulation day.
We would have no way of knowing that. All we would see is manila folders going in the box, and we would see manila folders being processed at the county board. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just taking it in. Okay, so let's go back to election. Let me back up. Has the mail-in voting operated like this before in Detroit?
Never.
When did these boxes go up?
The boxes could have been there from 2018.
So 2018 was the first election we did this in Detroit.
As far as I know, that might not be the accurate fact, but as far as I know, they were there at 2018. It was a big problem in 2018 too, in which I would personally believe that there was probably fraud, although I was not participating. But 2020 is when they went full scale with the boxes, the drop boxes, plus the unsolicited ballots.
So traditionally in Michigan, I'm not from Michigan, so I have to know, and our audience would like to know as well. Um, when you got an absentee ballot, you had to request one, correct?
So me personally, I requested an absentee ballot. I went on the Michigan website, requested a ballot. It's been about maybe over a month. I never received my absentee ballot, ever. I never got it. The process is you request it just like any other state, like Florida, and you get the absentee ballot, and you fill it out, and you take it to your clerk, and everything's fine. I requested the ballot. My family requested the ballot. No one ever received the ballot.
How many of your family?
My father and my mother.
Okay.
Yeah. Which were also first-time voters.
Did you ever check to see if they had ever, because I know there's a process online where you can look and see if they got received. So did you ever check to see if somebody else filled out your ballot or got your ballot?
I have not done that yet, but that is something I am looking to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should do that.
My family got worried, saying, where the hell's our ballots? I told them, you have to go to the clerk and just go fill it in at the clerk's office and do it. And they did that. Not that they were disappointed in that process, but they did it.
So if you request an absentee ballot, you never got it. At any point, did you receive an unsolicited ballot?
I received a letter from the state of Michigan stating that they would be sending out unsolicited ballots. I kept a record of it. I never followed up with it because I could catch that what was going on from that moment.
What's the point in even having?
There is no point. There is no point.
It's just sort of an artifact, it seems, at this point.
It's a fraudulent type of deal going on that's not certified.
Wow. Okay, so let's go back to the tabulation. Did you witness anything? Was this your first election that you worked in?
Yes, I voted before, but this is the first election, yes.
Okay. What else did you experience at the TCF?
People, my job was to stay at the center of the ballots. And the reason why is because we have the duplicate ballots.
Okay, the center of the ballots. Can you tell us what that means?
So you have the adjudication center. You have management.
This is in the middle of the room, right?
Middle of the room.
Yeah.
And then you have all of the ballots on the tables. The many, many thousands, I assume, is in the hundreds of thousands.
Okay.
Easily. But they also had a table which was just empty ballots, known as the duplicate ballots, where individuals from every table would come to this specific table in the center and grab a duplicate ballot when they would have an issue at their table with one of the original ballots. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what people were, and the reason why I was standing there to guard is because employees come all the time to the table, which I've witnessed and made incident reports about. They would take duplicate ballots, run back to their table, and throw them under the boxes illegally, and never do the duplicate process. They were stealing duplicate ballots, and they were not following the rest of the process.
So where do you think these were empty ballots that they were taking?
They were taking empty ballots
That should be used for duplication.
that should only be used for duplicates.
Right. So they're taking those, they're putting them under boxes.
Yes, they're stashing them.
What do you think is happening to them next?
Probably straight ticket for Joe Biden.
You think somebody's coming back and getting those and filling them out?
Every single table, every single worker, the many hundreds of workers all have pens. They all have pens at their tables. Every single employee, not every table, every single employee has pens at their table. And many employees are coming to the duplicate stash, grabbing ballots, grabbing not just one, grabbing 3 or 4 ballots, going back to the table. One of us would follow them back to the table, and they would just stash the ballots at the table without doing the duplicate process. I've made incident reports about that.
Okay. Excuse us one second.
No problem.
Who's Ted? Ted?
Yeah. Ted.
What was your last name?
Ted. Yeah.
It's Rosen Lab. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, no problem. giving us a pretty riveting account here.
I
So,
was there to see just about all of it.
okay, so what about the envelopes? Wouldn't the lack of an envelope for these ballots cause some sort of issue? Let's say you're right. If
Yeah.
somebody is taking a pen and they're just filling out straight ticket Democrat every time.
They have an envelope. It's a special envelope for just the duplicate ballots.
Okay.
For just the original duplicate ballots, they have envelopes for other purposes. So they have their own envelopes at their table. I'm sure they could stuff a bunch of ballots into an envelope, or even worse, fill out the ballot and just put it in the white USPS bin and put it through the tabulator. That's also a real probability.
Wouldn't there be a mismatch, a numerical mismatch between how many arrived in that batch and how many were actually counted? Is this checked?
As far as I know, no. See, what they were doing was taking the batch to the tabulator. I'm sure you're going to have mismatches all over the system. And that's what they're counting on. Is they want the mismatches to be you're going to see constantly mismatches until you just slash out everything that's illegal from the top. But so they were taking the ballots to the tabulator. They were putting it through. The tabulator would spark an issue for unknown reasons. And let's say it was like 10 ballots before, they would run the entire stack again a second time after taking out the one ballot and duplicating it probably for a third time now. There is a chance that it was probably duplicated for a third time. And then we would have to follow them back to the table and duplicate it again, and then run it through the tabulator again. The point is that they would take it to the tabulator after they would put it in the white bin, and there would be about 10 ballots that they would reprocess a second time. That's a flag that we were told to watch out for. Is any time that they would run the same ballots a second time after something goes wrong, you have to look out for that, because they are rerunning the same ballot twice. So maybe that's potentially something that a double count for each ballot.
But isn't there supposed to be somebody who's clicking a button on the screen that says okay or accept after
No.
they run through a second time?
No, they run it through the second time. At that point, after they run it, then they take it to adjudication. Now, I'm not sure what goes to adjudication and what doesn't go through adjudication.
Okay.
So they would go through yeah, go ahead.
Well, when you run a stack of ballots to the tabulator, it increments the
Of
vote-
200.
the ballot total by the amount in that stack, right?
Well, as it should, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they're running it through multiple times, did you witness the total vote count continuing to go up, or does the machine somehow know, well, these are just being rerun a second time because there was a problem, we're going to start back where the count was before?
That's for the system to know. I did not. Let's put it this way: that many times people would rerun the same ballots multiple times. Was I there to watch every single time? No. Did I see people rerunning ballots? Yes. Did I check the tabulator? No.
Okay, that's my question. Was the last one.
I did not check the
So
tabulator.
something looks suspicious to you, but
They would all run it at the same time.
what do you mean?
There would be multiple tabulators all running at the same times, and there's only one of me, and everyone's running them through the tabulators roughly around the same time.
So what time was this going on what date?
This was election night, multiple times throughout the night. We had about 3 to 4 batches. The fourth one I wasn't there for because I got kicked out. But the first 3 batches would start at 10 p.m. They would every table would get a stack of 50 ballots, and they would run them through the computers at their tables, and people would be watching the screens. After they're done with that, they'd come back to the table, grab more ballots, do that, come to the duplicate table if they need to. That's where I was. Do that. Have a stack of about 200 ballots at around 1 o'clock a.m., maybe 12:45, when they have about 200 ballots in the USPS bin. Take that USPS bin to the tabulator. So does that help clarify a little bit?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So you're saying that it's not only that somebody's standing there apparently run the same batch through multiple times, like they're trying to wait for an error to get cleared, but it's also that they're going into one bin, being run, going to another place, and then being run through another tabulator. Is that what you're saying?
12:45, everyone would come at the same time and run the tabulators. So that's when you would see at 2 a.m. Donald J. Trump is up 200,000 votes in Michigan, and at 4 a.m. or between 3 and 4 a.m., Joe Biden just shot straight up 100,000 votes.
I understand that, but I need to know what you saw.
During that time, they were doing all types of illegal activities. All types. So that was one example. So they would rerun ballots through the tabulators twice. Whether or not they got counted twice or not is something I don't know.
But the fact that Biden's lead
Jumped dramatically.
or Trump's lead diminished and Biden took over.
Yeah,
During this point,
not only was Trump up roughly 200,000, now Trump is down 180,000. So you just ran 400,000 ballots in roughly 2 hours, all for Biden.
does that seem strange to you?
The whole thing was strange ever since about 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
So this started early morning Wednesday, right?
Early, I talk about election or
The
election.
day
Yes,
after
12. Yes, exactly. You got it correct. Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. What else did you witness going on at that point?
Another thing that I witnessed going on was we were definitely outnumbered, meaning
Tell me what you mean by that.
all poll workers were Democrat.
All the poll workers were Democrat.
All poll workers were Democrat.
How did you know?
So first of all, they're all wearing. Many people were wearing Black Lives Matter.
The poll workers, the paid poll workers.
The paid poll workers were wearing masks of Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
They were chanting that the Proud Boys are like supremacy groups. They were
Did you see any Proud Boys out there?
no, they were
Did you
just
see
talking out of their ass.
Okay.
So they were cheering on the fact, and they were worried amongst themselves that Trump was winning. Smaller
Well,
discussions.
I need to know what you witnessed. So tell me specifically. Did you hear overhear these conversations? What did you experience?
I went up to the floor manager and I asked him, "Where's Gary?" Gary's the guy in charge for the Michigan GOP.
Mhm.
He looked at me and he just gave me a dirty look, which is fine. No big deal. I said, "Okay, so where's Gary?" So he doesn't know. He doesn't want to help. Next thing you know, he goes on the microphone and says, "This is what democracy is supposed to look like. This is what democracy is supposed to look like." And everyone cheered on for Joe Biden. Next thing you know, he says, "Go." And everyone and all the tables, rush in to the center and grab their 50 ballots that were handed to them. So this all happened from 1 a.m. to roughly the second batch of the drop-off, again at 4 a.m., where these people were vicious. These people were...
Tell me exactly what time. Not exactly, but within reason.
Between 1 a.m.
You heard him say, "Go. This is what democracy looks like."
This is what democracy is supposed to look
Go.
like. Go.
And the poll workers rush the absentee ballot.
They rush it. Yes, they all go from tables, and then they grab the ballots, and then they quickly process them all at their tables, all at the same time.
You're sure that they were grabbing? Okay, were they grabbing absentee ballots that had been completed, or blank ballots?
No, they were grabbing the ballots that were. I don't want to call them absentee because I'm not sure that they were all absentee, but they were grabbing ballots because there's a difference between the ballots.
Okay, so why weren't they just processing them in a normal, steady flow? Why the theatrical? This is what democracy is supposed to look like. Go, and they all bam do it at once. What's the point of that?
It was definitely a collective attack.
So how many GOP poll challengers were present when this happened?
At that time, we were weakening out because many people couldn't withstand the entire shift. They got there at 10 p.m. and some left at midnight, some left at 2, some left at 5.
And this incident you just told me about happened around 1 a.m.?
This incident happened around 4 a.m., but at 1 or 2 a.m. they did another batch very similar to this, other than the fact that he said this is what democracy is supposed to look like.
4 a.m. and when?
At 1 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Okay.
Both of those batches, something's wrong with them. Completely. 100%. Something's wrong with it.
Do you know where those ballots that were processed in those two tranches, I guess we'll call them, do you know where they came from when they arrived?
The 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. batch was already there.
When?
It was there that night. Meaning TCF Center already had them in possession, and all they had to do is count them. As far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I know,
okay.
As
If you didn't see where they were, that's fine. Just tell me.
no. What I saw is employees bringing boxes into the room at 1 to 2 a.m., placing them on tables and counting. 4 a.m. was a different story.
Do you know where they brought those boxes from?
What I'm saying is that by the time I realized it, they were already within the TCF Center, so they could have been just dropped in from the outside. They could have been dropped off. Possibility. But I did not hear or see any vehicles approach the building at that time. I'm assuming that they probably had them in a room within the center and just brought them out to be counted. But I could be wrong. My point is I didn't see any outside source.
Okay.
Unlike 4 a.m.
What happened at 4 a.m.?
4 a.m., I'm standing with my buddy, who's also a challenger. His name is Rich Pinnock, where he eyewitnessed a van come in through the dock, and he told me by the time I looked, I would see the same management team that's been conducting the entire operation bringing in ballots through the back door, opposite to the glass doors that were boarded up, opposite side. This is the back side now. Complete. So if that glass door was north, this would be south.
Okay.
Of the building. The managers were bringing in boxes.
Yeah.
From the opposite side, unlike the 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. count, and placing them all over the tables.
Did you see this or did Rich see this?
He eyewitnessed the truck.
Okay.
We both eyewitnessed the boxes being brought in with the employees through the back door.
Were the ballot boxes sealed when they brought them in?
They were boxes, but they were wrapped with Baker box coverings, so like a four-sided covering over the box. So it would be just a regular manila box, like a Baker box, with a covering of the Baker box. It's like a slip over the box, and they would bring it to the tables, remove the slip, open the box full of ballots.
So there wasn't any kind of seal really that would have prevented somebody from sticking anything in there?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it normal for a truck to show up with a bunch of ballots? How else would ballots be delivered, I guess is what I'm asking.
My standpoint is that the whole thing is illegal because none of the 10 p.m. batch was also illegal. The whole night is illegal.
Why?
All these ballots are all, for the most part, probably uncertified. These are, meaning they have been received after 8 p.m. on election day, and they're probably uncertified ballots.
So is that a legal requirement that the
Yes.
ballots have to be there they have to be at the Cobo Hall by 8 p.m.?
Yes, Michigan, we went through the courts, and they wanted extra time, and in Michigan, they were denied that. So they had needed to do it on election day, and the plan for the Democrats were to have these absentee boards count all the ballots the next night, and they were going to continue planning on counting them over the next several days after the election regardless, said by the Secretary of State on the radio, which I did hear. Even though they were ruled by law to have the ballots collected and have the results in, because we should be only having an election day, not an election week. But they counted all these ballots that night, and another reason why the entire operation is illegal, and this happened in Oakland County too, is because I applied to be a worker just like anyone else.
A poll worker?
Poll worker in Oakland County. What happened was that they sent out an email saying that they need people to...
I'm familiar with that issue. Can we come back to that in just a second?
Yeah, no problem.
I still want to get a couple of details out of you on this other thing. Oh, first of all, before you leave, I want to get Rich Pinnock's contact information from you.
No problem.
About the ballot fan that showed up at 4 a.m. Are you aware of somebody, and you know, I regret that this is the only way I have to describe it, but I had a different person who witnessed this tell me that there was a young Asian gentleman who was watching that back door and saw the van and saw the people who were working around it, but we haven't been able to find out who this guy was.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see any?
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Do you happen to know his name or his contact?
He would be through the Michigan GOP as a poll challenger. His contact information would be there because he was credentialed.
Okay. Did you speak with him?
I spoke with him not about that situation, but I would just say, hey, you know, how's it going? I would stand next to him. I saw him working, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know his name. I know he's credentialed to the Michigan GOP.
Okay. Okay, so you knew a bunch of ballots showed up.
Yeah.
You knew they weren't supposed to be showing up after 8 p.m.
Correct.
What did you do?
I fought it out to witness what we could do.
How did you fight it out? What does that mean? Did you file a challenge?
They didn't even file the challenging accurately. When you challenge a ballot, which I did, you go to a table, they would fill something out. If you see any mistakes, you challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you challenge, there is a procedure that the workers must follow, whether that involves like setting them to the side or putting a sticker on it saying this is challenged.
Right.
Right? They didn't follow that process ever, not even once. So we would challenge the ballots all night, and they would say, "What's the deal?" And we would say this, and they would say, "No, that's not a problem." And it's very hard to tell, and they would continue on, and we would just write incident reports.
Okay. What else did you see happen?
I did eyewitness employees filling out straight ticket ballots for the Democrat Party.
Duplication ballots?
Yes.
Couldn't that be legitimate if they were duplicating a damaged ballot?
Legitimate or illegitimate?
Could that be legitimate?
Not when they would write it in the way that they did, no.
Okay.
It would be illegitimate.
So tell me about one instance where you saw this happen. Tell me exactly what happened.
There was a GOP poll worker at a table watching over the duplicate process. There were 4 Democrat challengers against the 1 GOP challenger watching over. And the 4 challengers were not watching the duplicate process. They were attacking the GOP challenger saying, "You're too close, you're too close." And the first one was unsuccessful because she was watching the duplicate process. The second one was unsuccessful, saying the same thing. The third one says, "You're too close, step back," unsuccessful. The fourth one, she was distracted, the GOP challenger. The second that the GOP challenger looked to her left, the poll workers filled in the Democrat ticket.
Did you see the original ballot?
I was letting her watch the procedure. I was standing from several feet behind them watching the instance, but over the right-hand shoulder, over the employees. So I didn't see every single thing, but I did see one poll worker take in the center, take the pen and fill in one bubble, the Democrat ticket, and I saw the second employee take the ballot out from the site. So by the time the GOP challenger would look back, it's done and taken away, all within a second. And I witnessed that and made an incident report about that
So
too.
what makes you suspicious of that the ballot being duplicated wasn't really straight down?
I know it wasn't. It was it looked like a mixed ticket.
Oh, so you were able to see the original ballot.
I was able to see it, but not precisely.
Right.
But I could
you can
see
still see if there's marks here and here versus
Yeah.
just
versus one bubble.
Right.
All they need is one bubble. They all
Right.
have pens.
Right.
They all have the ballots, and there's only one bubble that they secretly have to put in, the Democrat ticket.
Right. And so you saw multiple bubbles in the original,
Oh yeah, the original was multiple.
but the one they duplicated it to was straight ticket down.
That's what they filled in.
Yes.
So it could have been that during the process that they were following the procedure, and that some of them were followed, but the moment she looked away, they filled in the Democrat ticket. So when you put it in the computer, it flips it the other way.
And at this point, this is about what time, roughly?
This is around 1 a.m., 2 a.m.,
1 a.m., 2 a.m. There's how many GOP poll challengers down there?
50 to 100.
50 to 100. And how many tables?
Approximately over 200, I would say about 400 to 500. It was a complete packed room full of tables with 5 employees at each table.
And there's supposed to be a poll challenger from each party at each table, right?
Yeah, there's supposed to be, but we had about one challenger per 4 tables, just covering some area bases. And then when someone would take a duplicate ballot, I would tell that challenger, hey, watch over this procedure, this duplication, make sure it goes right. And I would run back to the table and make sure no one would steal ballots, which there were cases that they did that. But we were definitely outnumbered, I would say 9-1, because all the workers seemed to be Democrat, and there was many challengers on the Democrat Party that probably outnumbered us too.
Wow. Okay, tell me about the circumstances in which you were ejected. You said you were kicked out. When did that happen?
That happened around 2 p.m.
On Wednesday,
Yes.
November 4th.
Yeah.
What happened?
So let me just take one step back.
Mhm.
The first set of ballots that we processed were from 10 p.m. to about 1 to 2 p.m. Okay. The second set of ballots, which I felt something going wrong there too, was about 1 to 2 p.m. to about 4 to 5 a.m. And then we had this third set of ballots that were dropped off, okay, at the middle of the night. And that process went from about 5 a.m. to about 2 p.m. That entire set.
That corresponds, if I understand you right, that corresponds with when this van full of ballots
Yes.
showed up.
Yes.
So
Those
you guys
ballots.
were tabulating those
Ballots from
4 a.m. when they were
4 to 5 a.m. to about 2 p.m. the next day.
Wow.
I stayed for the entire thing. Around 2 p.m. the next day, after fighting that battle, I walked out the room to get a snack. Next thing I hear is that the governor of Michigan calls in through the Department of Health after 80% of the employees have left, because most of it's been counted by 2 p.m. They brought the security in. They boarded up the windows. They would not let me back in, and they counted the military ballots.
How do you know that the governor called through?
I think I overheard the attorney saying that the Department of Health is putting in COVID measures so that poll challengers would be limited to a certain number on every side.
Okay, but you don't know that Governor Whitmer personally did that.
I do know that the reason why they wouldn't let us in were for COVID restrictions.
Right, but when you said the governor called in, I just want to make sure we're being very precise about our language here. We don't know that the governor called in and did this. We know that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services made this call, right?
What I heard was that the governor. I first heard that the Department of Health of Michigan would be implementing this COVID-related new rules,
Yes.
and which is complete BS to begin with, because the whole night the whole room was packed. It looked like
Right.
the New York Stock Exchange at its highest level, the amount of traffic. This is after 80% of the employees left, and after all the challengers were dead and had to leave. that I was told that the Department of Health was putting in the security and police to not allow us back in as soon as I left the room. And the next thing you hear is that this is instructed from the governor. So whether or not it's instructed from the governor, I don't know, but that's what I heard.
And you overheard this conversation between two lawyers?
No, when I was asking the people next to me why I can't get back in, they were telling me that the governor instructed the Michigan Department of Health to enforce these restrictions, these COVID restrictions, to not let us back in. And that's when they counted the military ballots. So they essentially counted the military ballots in the most secret way they could, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Because they would not count the military ballots when I was in the room. So they count the military ballots when I left the room, closed it up. Now you count the military ballots.
How many military ballots do you think there were?
I have no idea. If I knew that they were waiting for me to leave the room to count the military ballots, I would have stayed. But I worked from 10 p.m. to 2 p.m. the next day, nonstop, without any breaks other than bathroom breaks. And the first moment I leave the room to get a snack is when they close it up and they count the military ballots.
So why weren't the Dems kicked out?
Oh, the Dems were welcomed in. So were the media.
Did you see that?
Yes, while we were all chanting "Stop the Fraud" at the door, the security would allow media to walk in and people that were credentialed, that were not media.
But you guys had credentials too, right?
Yes.
Wow. How did you know they were Dems?
They were in Michigan GOP. So 100%, I don't know, but for the most part,
Could they have been a nonpartisan group?
No.
An NGO?
No. Those they did that separately. They would announce, okay, we can allow 10 independent people, and then we would come back and say, okay, 10 go in, independents go in. So that followed a separate system. There's two systems. There's our system, and there was their system. Their system was very open and welcoming to their people, and our system was fall in line, follow the rules, COVID restrictions, not allowed in, you must wait, we're full at capacity, excuse after excuse, while they continue to do their business.
So the 4 a.m. ballot dump happens. Those votes are being counted from about 5 a.m. until 2 p.m. when you're locked out. Were they finished counting those at 2 p.m. when you were locked out?
No, they were finished tabulating, but even after tabulating, they have a whole nother process. Or during tabulation, I don't know what they do. They sit at their desk and they just put them back in the folders, I guess. And they match them up and all that. And that takes some time too. That took them an hour or two just to do that. Just to finalize the procedure, which I don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would walk around the room, make sure that they're properly finishing up and no one's doing anything sneaky, but they would just sit there for an hour or two, and then some would finish early, put their head down and fall asleep, and others were just finalizing, putting them back in the envelopes and, I guess, storing them.
Okay.
Not too sure.
What's my train of thought? How was the atmosphere in the Covo Center?
It was, I can't put it any other way other than a collective attack.
Did you feel intimidated?
I'm not intimidated. I feel bad for and I hate to say this, I feel bad for the black conservatives that live in Detroit, because these were 99% black, sorry to put it this way, black liberals doing a collective attack and suppressing the black conservative vote in Detroit. That's the way I see it. That Donald J. Trump suffered from voter suppression throughout all of Detroit, but especially the black conservative or the black Trump vote, or even John James too, the whole ticket.
And do you say that that's an issue with black conservatives because of the demographics of Detroit where this took place?
Not because of just the demographics, because of the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is completely liberal. It's a big city.
But why does this affect black conservatives specifically?
Because, for example, in America, you have the freedom to vote for whoever you'd like. Well, let's just say, for example, someone voted for Joe Biden, but they put John James for Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. You have that right. Not if they're filling in the Democrat ticket at the top, and they put it through a tabulator.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
when you mentioned that you felt bad for the black conservatives and
Yes.
the black Trump
Yes.
voters,
Yes.
I want to know why what you experienced made you feel specifically concerned on their behalf.
Because
What is it about being a black conservative that made this experience worse?
I've never seen a race eat out its own race this large before, using their collective. But when I mean collective, I mean the whole room. All the workers were all Democrat.
Mhm.
They're black Democrats.
How are they behaving?
They were very, I would say, cutthroat.
Were you being allowed to observe the things you were supposed to observe as a poll challenger?
Yeah, but even observing is not enough because everything looks the same. They all look like a piece of paper, and they all get run through the same machine, and it's the entire process. The whole night was illegal, in my opinion.
So how does this experience make you feel about the integrity of our election?
There is zero integrity in Detroit and anywhere that has a counting board ran by a Democrat bureaucracy, including Oakland County.
Okay. Just one more question. Did anybody offer you any compensation to come here and speak with me today?
No,
Thank you very much.
no problem.